Right, and if you can just keep yourselves on mute, that'll be great. Okie doke. And then any questions, either put them into the chat as I'm talking, or you can save them to the end because there'll be a Q&A at the end. Right, here we go. Let's put them here. So the importance of evidence. Being a finalist or a winner of a credible business award is the most powerful way to gain recognition, build your credibility, and celebrate your achievements. Strong evidence in your award entry is essential to stand out. So here's why strong evidence is so important. The judges need proof. So people who make claims in their industry and don't back it up are just going to, that information then is not valid, because if you haven't actually evidenced what you're saying, then the information you've put in isn't going to be counted towards your marks. So you need to prove whatever claims that you make. And good evidence will set you apart from other generic wishy-washy entries in that category. Strong evidence really does give you the edge, and this will give you the edge when you're entering other awards as well as ours. Because as I said earlier, I've judged other awards, so I know that the strength of the evidence in other awards isn't great either. You really want the evidence to build trust and confidence in your business when the judges are looking at it. This is your opportunity to shine and showcase what you've done. When you work in a corporate environment, you get, maybe an annual appraisal, something like that, where people will tell you how well you're doing with your job. When you run a business, you don't have that. So awards are actually a way of you being able to get validation and recognition for the work that you're doing. So I always say awards are a little bit like an appraisal, really. It just gives you that opportunity to get feedback on all of the aspects of your business. So you need to support your submission properly and make your entry memorable for all the right reasons, because specifics will stick in a judge's mind, and hopefully one of our judges might be able to join us later. Far more than broad claims or what I call very generic statements. By being very specific and demonstrating your knowledge, your expertise, your achievements, and how you've helped and supported your clients is going to make you memorable for all the right reasons. And it also, the work you do putting together your evidence is an opportunity to have a document that you can potentially use and repurpose in other areas of your business. So in business pitches, maybe on your website or in social media. So you've got a lot of reasons why putting together a strong evidence pack is so important. So the common mistakes that we see, and there are a lot, so I've just kind of distilled it down to 4 things that we see a lot. With our awards, we see people adding a logo and their headshot into the evidence area of the uploads at the bottom of the form. We don't actually ask for this. Now, some awards do. So if an award says, can you upload your logo and your photo? Obviously, you want to do that. But that's not evidence either. That will be because they want it maybe for slides, or they might want it for their program. So adding a logo and a photo is not evidence. Adding photos which are not clearly labelled and that you're not really explaining the relevance of those images are also not evidence. So yeah, it's nice to have some pictures of your maybe working with your clients or your business or whatever, like, I'm not saying don't include those, but what I'm saying is that some people just upload a few photographs and that's it. So we had one where, a dog groomer had uploaded a picture of the dog grooming table as evidence and nothing else. And therefore the judges were a bit like, well, I would expect a dog groomer to have a dog grooming table. What she could have done was maybe some before and after photos of the dogs and maybe added client testimonials and case studies, etc. So there has to be a purpose behind any photos that you add. Not adding financial information is another one. Now we have an upload box where you have to upload it. The entry won't submit without it. However, people think they can be clever and they'll upload, for example, a blank piece of paper where they've typed on it, "I'm not giving you my financial information." And they upload that, so the entry will submit. Or they maybe just, I don't know, send us something which isn't going to help in terms of the judges understanding, your financial information. What's your turnover? What's your profit? And we'll discuss this in more detail later. So if you're entering our awards, we're not judging you on how much money you're making. We're judging people on whether they have a viable business. And a lot of businesses in their first 5 years won't make money, and that's perfectly fine. And, the judges are all very accomplished business people, and therefore, they are just making sure that you are running a business and not a hobby. And then the final thing to consider is that we see a lot of evidence that doesn't make sense. And the judges are trying to understand, well, why have they included that? What's its relevance? What is it evidencing? As in, I can't quite understand which question that relates to or which claim that's been made. So you need to make it easy for them to kind of go, right, okay, that piece of evidence goes with that question, so that they understand what relevance it has to your entry. So these are the common mistakes that we see when people put evidence into award entries. And I know that other awards have this problem as well. So I know it's not unique to us. So 5 essential pieces of evidence that you should include in any award entry, pretty much. We'd love to see all of this in ours, but if you're entering other awards, make yourself really stand above everybody else. So as I mentioned earlier, your financials. So if you've got an accountant, you would get a summary once a year from your accountant, so you can include that. Or if you're using Xero or any of the online accounting software, you can print off a profit and loss from that. You can download a profit and loss report and put that in. That's perfectly acceptable. We're not expecting you to send us your bank statements. But in that question, you have a box where you upload a document, but you've also got a little bit of extra room to type in a bit more. And maybe there's a year that you've had which hasn't been great, and there's a reason behind that. Or maybe there's something that you've invested in your business, which has obviously reduced your profit. So really thinking around explaining those numbers is going to help any judge to understand where your business is going. Is it growing? Is it, just ticking over, which is also fine? Or has there been a dip for some reason? So you can also explain what your costs are, what your profit margin is, what your cost savings that you may have decided to implement, and how you are positioned in your market. Are you getting more market share? And then your turnover, your net and gross profit. And if you're entering a new business category for any awards, but ours especially, you need to include some forecasting, because the judges want to know that you have got business acumen and you have got plans with your business. So they want to see, what it is you're going to be doing in the future. So what you think it might be. And I know a lot of the time it's very much put a finger in the air and try and work it out. But you should be putting together some form of forecasting. 3 to 5 year forecasting is ideal for the new business category, because it does show that you've got business acumen, and that's what you're trying to demonstrate, that you are a good business person. So the next thing you must include is client testimonials. So hopefully you've been collecting those online. Now you should try and collect them on Facebook or on Google or LinkedIn recommendations, or maybe, depends on what your business is, Check a Trade, and there's also some out there for the financial sector. Because these really are strong evidence, because people have gone on and left this information there. It's your digital footprint. Now, what I would do is pull off maybe 5 really good ones it might be from one source, but it might be from a multitude of places where you've got reviews, and pop those into a document, and then add the links to where they can find other reviews that have been left for you, because they may want to read in more detail more reviews. Because if it comes down to maybe two or three people in a category that are really, really strong, if they're trying to decide who to give their points to, their additional points, and I'll talk a bit about that later, the difference between them being able to see where your other testimonials are could edge you into being selected or winning gold or silver. So I think it's really important for you to signpost the judges and tell them where that information is. Now, I understand some of you might have a business where it's difficult to get online reviews due to the nature of what you do. So we have had people in our awards that have dealt with people who've maybe been sexually abused or domestic violence, or maybe they've had some very difficult scenarios in their lives and they don't want to leave online reviews, and I totally get that. However, you can get them to give you an email about their experience of working with you and include that in there. One lady a couple of years ago recorded some testimonials, uploaded them onto a YouTube link, private link, but did them from the back of the person's head. So their face wasn't visible and the link was private anyway on YouTube. So she included that, and I thought that was actually quite innovative and to take that trouble to do that. So testimonials, in my opinion, they add authenticity and credibility to your entry, and no award entry should not have a submission with reviews in it. And make reviews part of what you do with your business when you finish a job for somebody or you sell them a product. Signpost them to where you want them to leave you a review so that you're collecting them all the time. It's a constant thing, because there's nothing worse than looking at somebody's business and they haven't had a fresh review for like 2 years. That's not going to send out the greatest of signals, to be honest. So the next thing I would say is, again, depends what you do, but before and after comparisons or case study. So these are more detailed than a testimonial. This is talking about the transformation that you've made with somebody or your product or your service, whatever it might be, over the time people have worked with you. So this highlights the progress that people make working with you, and it demonstrates your results as well. So I think, these are really important, and you don't need to include loads, but let's take, for example, if you were a business coach or a life coach, I would say you want to include probably 3, maybe 4 really strong ones. And this talks about where they were when they started to work with you and where they were when they finished the work with you. So you can read a story, and it takes the judges on that journey of what you're like to work with, the difference that you make. So again, it will depend on your business, but most people can insert something like this. So if you were a graphic designer and you'd redesign somebody's logo, you can show the difference there. If you were working in marketing and you could show the difference the work that you've done has made to that business. I mean, I don't think there's any businesses really that can't show a before and after comparison of some sort or a case study. And if you're not sure how to do that, you can always contact me and I'll give you some advice. The next thing is your key performance indicators. So this is including in your entry some data around the growth of your business. We all start off with 0 clients. Where are you now? Perhaps put that into a little visual graph that can show the judges, oh yeah, okay, so we've now grown up to that level. It might be around how many customers that you retain. Now, you might have a product or service that people will only buy from you once. Maybe you could demonstrate in your entry how many of those people go on to refer you to other people. You might want to talk about your conversion rates from maybe Google Ads or your website or social media. So just have a think around some of the data points in your business and what you can demonstrate. And then the final thing is your client retention. So, and your satisfaction stats on. And I really want you to think, if you are entering a customer service category, this information is vital. But generally, if you're just entering any other categories aside from customer services, it's still really important to include. You can easily set up a customer satisfaction survey on MailChimp have a facility to do it, SurveyMonkey, etc. There's a number of platforms out there. You're not going to necessarily want to have 50 questions, but even 5 to 10 questions that you send out to your clients and ask them how satisfied they are with your services. Even if you're not entering awards, you should be doing this. So this bit of information, this survey, you can put into your business award entry to demonstrate to the judges, look, I have X number of clients and this is their responses to my survey and what they think about the work that I do and the difference that I've made. So this is kind of an extension to sort of reviews, if you like, but this means that the judges can go, okay, so they've got 70% of their clients that they work with are happy. I mean, no one's going to get 100%. It's unlikely you'll get 100%. You might do. But it's interesting for the judges to see that. And you can also, if you've got a team and you're applying for something like Best Female Leader, or you want the judges to know what a great boss you are, you may want to include a staff survey as well. So I think surveys are quite important, and it's really interesting for the judges to understand, what it is that you're doing and how well you're doing it. Business reliability, so important to demonstrate that. Now, this next slide's got a load of other ideas on it. So I would say that first slide has 5 things that you should always put into every award entry to demonstrate your business acumen and your client satisfaction, etc. Now, these ones will depend on what awards that you're entering. For our awards, these are all good things that you can put in. So if you've got a qualification in what you're doing, let's take a coach because that's quite a good example. So if you've done a coaching qualification, include a copy of the certificate. Include copies of anything that you feel are relevant to the category that you're entering, because this builds trust. So, we don't need your GCSE results, by the way, or a copy of a degree certificate. But if you've done specialised qualifications within your industry, then I think it's really important to put a copy of that certificate into your entry. If you've already won awards, or you might have an ISO certification or quality marks or anything around this section, awards already achieved, then include those as well. Because again, this shows industry recognition, peer recognition, and could be very important depending on what you do. Press coverage. So if you have had press coverage and media mentions, you might want to include some copies of the articles that you've had published. If you've been a guest on a podcast, or maybe you've had a news feature about you, you might have been somebody who's done a TEDx talk or a speaker at an event. You can include that kind of information because, again, it demonstrates that you've got business acumen, that you're getting visibility, and it's also relevant to your industry. Coming back to photos, which we talked about at the very beginning, you really want to make sure that the photos that you include enhance the entry and are relevant. So collages are quite good, because you can put quite a few things in a nice collage and show lots of different aspects of your business. Maybe some screen grabs of your digital platform, so quickly shows the judges. If you've got an Instagram, you could put in a screenshot of that and show the number of followers and a bit more about the interaction on your page, for example, so you could put that in as well. But really think carefully about the photos you put in, as I said earlier. Don't overload the entry with loads of photos and nothing else. So if you work with a charity or you give your time to anything, it could be anything from being a governor at a school, being on the PTA, through to projects that you might give your time to help, or you might be a trustee of a charity, or you might have a charity that you raise money for every year. The Best Businesswomen Awards puts a very high emphasis on businesses that give back. I will tell you that because I think it's very important. And I've put a lot of emphasis on that in my business over the years. So I expect other business owners to do the same. So you need to include evidence in that. So we get statements made in entries, things like, we do a lot for charity. Well, that is meaningless. You need to put what you do and more information, and then get that charity or organization just to give you a few words about the difference that you've made to them, giving them your support. So that could be an email, it might be an online review, but you need something to validate what you're actually saying in your entry that you're doing. And I think, you know, the whole thing around social impact is about the impact that your business is having in your local community, or it could be in your industry. You might be giving back in your industry, doing something. Could be that you have, you know, work experience, or that you've spoken at an industry event and maybe given some time, done a free workshop. You know, you really need to sit down and brainstorm all of these things and then include that as part of your evidence. The next thing is around if you've got teams or staff. Now, you might actually be somebody who's using freelancers, and that's perfectly fine. That tends to be how a lot of businesses are run these days. So if you are using freelancers, you can include something about them in your entry, and maybe some information about how they support your business, and maybe they can give you a kind of review about what it's like to work with you and how they fit into your business. If you've actually got employees, you would want to really think about including something around staff retention and some testimonials from your staff as well. And what you're doing to retain your staff, you know, what leadership and development programs have you got in place? What incentives do you have for your staff? How do you support them, you know, day to day with the challenges that they might be faced personally and professionally? So getting that into your entry and getting some supporting evidence around that is really important. And then innovation proof points. So this is more aimed at people who have a product. It might be that you have a course that you've trademarked, or that you've registered the intellectual property for that. So if you have, and you can include a copy of the patent, if you've got a product, then that again shows forward thinking, differentiation, and also, you know, that you've got business acumen, that you've gone to the trouble of trademarking your logo, or you've gone to the trouble trademarking the business name. So put that in as well. And then the final point on this slide is around business plans and marketing plans. Now, most people will write a business plan when they set up their business to give them some clarity and focus, and then they forget all about it. And this is an opportunity to revisit your business plans and think about, have you got a business plan for the next 12 months? It can be on one page. It doesn't have to be super detailed. But obviously, you may be somebody who's gone for funding, and therefore you have got a more detailed business plan. So those are always interesting documents to put in for the judging panel. And the same with marketing plans. You know, they're going to want to see that you've got plans to market your business over the coming 12 months. So inserting that in and explaining some of the methodology you're using to grow and promote your business is really interesting for them to read, and you will gain extra marks for that. So what not to add? Couldn't have a slide without talking about this. I mean, this is not an exhaustive list, but I've picked out the main things. So we see people uploading their whole company handbook or their whole staff handbook, and the judges are not going to have time to read it. And you're going to be using up valuable megabytes uploading these huge documents. And we get people phone us every single year going, oh, I'm trying to upload it and it won't upload. And then I say, well, how big's the file? Oh, it's 32 megabytes. Well, that's why it's not uploading. I'll go through the file sizes in a minute. But, you know, you just don't want to be putting that in. You can mention in your award entry you have a company handbook or a staff handbook if you have, and that's relevant. You don't need to upload copies of contracts that you have, and policies and large brochures. These are not really relevant. You know, you can mention in your entry that you have these documents, but you don't have to put them as supporting evidence. You really don't want to be uploading anything which is huge, which the judges are like, well, what is the relevance of this? I've already talked about photos. I'm not going to keep going on about those. But the other thing we see a lot of is outdated information. So if you won an award 7 years ago, it's really not, that's not recent. That's not recent enough. You really want to be focusing on the last couple of years. So when you're thinking about award submissions, think about what have I done in the last couple of years that I want to put in this entry. The other thing people do is they'll sort of upload a screenshot, let's say, of their Instagram showing that they've got 1 million followers. And this has happened. So this isn't me making this up. And one of the women a few years ago complained that she did not win her category because she had 1 million followers. And she felt it was unfair. And I said, but this isn't a competition about how many followers you have on social media. Had it been that competition, then you have a valid point, but it isn't. It's about business acumen. And judges know you can buy followers. They're not silly. So they're looking at, okay, what's your interaction on social media? If you can include some of the screenshots of your insights on your social media, so you're actually showing the reach and the engagement, that's what they're interested in, because actually you could have a very small following, but it could be very engaged. So that's a good thing. And that shows that the content that you're putting out there is actually valuable content. So, you know, if you're putting in screenshots of social media, make sure it actually has some meaning. The next thing we see is a lot of unrelated personal achievements or unrelated challenges. So we see this every year. So a picture of running the London Marathon, you know, that's great. And it might tie in with your business, especially if maybe you're a fitness trainer or you're in the health industry, or you'd made a commitment to raise money for a charity over 12 months as part of your business plan. And running the London Marathon was part of that, along with other things. So it could be relevant, but it's about you thinking about the relevance to your business. Every year, I will guarantee you somebody will also upload a photo of themselves with their child getting into Oxford or get their degree photo. This again is not relevant because that's your child's achievement. Now, you know, we all try and be supportive parents. That is not a business achievement. Also, we hear people talking about loss of a relative or having cancer or other serious illnesses. And then potentially, you know, we've had people uploading pictures of themselves in hospital as part of their evidence. Again, it's really not important and it's not part of evidence unless it is directly in some way related to your business. And all you'll do is irritate the judges by doing that. And the other final thing we see a lot of is the vague and fluffy testimonials where people have gone, oh, yeah, she's great. She was great to work with. And that's it. That's, again, pretty meaningless. You know, you want substance behind the reviews that you are sharing in your entry. You want the judges to get an overview of what it's like to work with you. So really, it's about when you're putting your evidence together going, okay, before I put this in, does it directly support the award question or the judging criteria? Is this recent and is it relevant? And will it impress or inform the judges? So if the answer is no to any of those questions, then don't put it in. And if you've got something and you're not really sure either way, you can always ring us and we'll give you our thoughts on it before submission day. We will not be doing that on the last day because we are inundated with phone calls all day. And I would hope that you'd get your entry in plenty of time. But if you're looking at doing it in the next week or so, next couple of weeks really, then do give us a call if you're not sure. So I want to talk about evidence presentation now, and I've got an expert here, so I'm going to stop sharing in a minute, and she's going to talk a bit about Canva. But I'm just going to go through my slide first. I don't know why my slides have got these weird blue dots on them. Anyway, so if you get your evidence designed properly, it can make it much clearer for the judges, and it also looks like you've made a bit of an effort. Now, these days, we increasingly see people designing things on Canva or Adobe Express, but if you don't want to do that, you can still just create a Word document or a PDF and just put the information written. Maybe you don't want to put screenshots and you don't want to put photos. That's perfectly fine. And just make sure you label each upload so that the judges know which question it relates to, because it makes their life easier. So you can upload 4 file types. Sorry, 4 files, not file types, 4 files. Now, there are most of the entry questions are between 6 and 8 questions. So the file sizes are 8 megabytes, which is quite big. And you can put 4 in. So you can combine, say, question 1, question 2. Or you might not need to put anything for question 1. So it might be, you know, that you want to reference a particular question. You don't have to put evidence in for every single question. But relate it, label it so that they understand it. So if it's testimonials, you can label it testimonials. If it's financials, you can label it financials. So just make it easy. Don't just leave the file a mixture of numbers and letters, so the judges really don't know what it relates to. And the final point before I stop sharing so we can speak to one of our experts is that you cannot upload videos, but you can put links to a video. So, for example, if you've got a video that talks about your business or showcases something that you do, it could be a public video that you've got on YouTube, then you can just put the YouTube link somewhere in your entry. Somebody last year had about 6 different videos they wanted to share. So she just had a page and she put the links onto a page and uploaded that as part of her evidence. So it's down to you how you do it. You can put them in the actual entry question somewhere. Depends on how many words that you've used, because obviously you've got a word count. Or you, as I said, you can put them onto a sheet and put them in. But what you can't do is upload video, because we would need a huge amount of bandwidth on our website to accommodate that. Right, let's stop sharing for a minute. So I'm delighted to be joined by Marie-Louise O'Neill today. And Marie-Louise is a Canva expert, and I am going to hand over to her to showcase some examples of how you could put your evidence together. Marie-Louise, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me to come along. Am I able to share my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. I have stuff prepared.
Like that.
Yeah. I didn't want to come here empty-handed. So with my evidence, I applied for the 2023 award. I had a break last year because I had a baby, and I'm not applying this year because I've still got a baby. It's just a bigger baby. This is what I put together. I'm a very visual person, so I did put lots of photos in. And as a little bonus, I've sort of created a version of this and made it into like a template form. So I will share the link to this as a template in the chat, and I will make it available to Debbie to share with the replay, so that you can, you know, work with what I've created, make it your own. So I've put that together for you. So so I just included a little logo and a photo of myself because I made it sort of on on brand. I put a little section called About the Business, because I talked about my own business evolution, and there's a little link to a little video that I'd created already that I thought was worth including at the time. In the template version, I picked out a timeline template and inserted it, so you could put some, it's up to you how far back you want to talk about the history of your business, just to give a flavor of, you know, like how did you get started and some key milestones, or it might be specific to the past year or two. It's really up to you. I then did a little page about myself. So I felt it was important to have an excerpt from my CV, as it were, to talk about my experience as a graphic designer and my education. And then I also put a couple of more personal things in, just to give it like a rounded experience. And then what did I do for here? So on here, I've just sort of put some spaces for you to put your own pictures. You can obviously delete some of those. An example, again, of a more CV and a bit of a summary there. So again, you can do with it as you wish. For mine, for the customer service bit, I did do screenshots of testimonials that were on usually like LinkedIn, but I have included a little bit where you could type in and put yours in if you wanted to extract that and maybe include a photo of your client if they allow it. So I included a couple of pages with different testimonials. There's quite a few that I included. I also included a page about business growth activities. I sort of covered social media, so I gave the numbers at that point in time, and again, because I'm visual, some screenshots of those platforms at the time. And then I've just extracted that for yourself if you wanted to include the same. I also put in about speaking events. So I just included various relevant photos that related to that. If I was to do that again or next time when I apply, probably next year, I would probably include a bit more of a summary on that page. So this is part of like my digital brochure as a guest expert. So not only would I include sort of some relevant photos showing me in action, I would probably talk a bit more about it, which ties in nicely with what Debbie was talking about. Maybe in hindsight, that's a little bit just plonked on. I mean, you can read a little bit of like, if you sort of zoom in as to what those are about. And then I also talked about that I've written various articles, including I'm in Brand New magazine as a regular contributor. So I thought it was nice to show all my articles, sort of backdated for a while there. And then for you guys, I just again allowed you to, or put space for photos and sort of a summary. I also did put about other achievements, so including other awards that I was putting myself forward at the time, and things like publishing, self-publishing my journal that was relevant at the time, and being a Canva creator. So it's all things that I talked about in my entry. And for you guys, I've just again created a bit of space so you can use these image blocks if you want to. I also included screenshots of my profit and loss, which I've taken out of this example because I didn't want to keep that private. And I also shared a screenshot of my cash flow, so the incomings and outgoings, which is what I supplied for the financial section. But I have got your back for this. So I've grabbed a relevant template from Canva and kind of just updated it, just so it is in dollars because that's how it came. So you could update that, or you could just download your profit and loss account. And then I also included this financial like summary thing, and this is editable, so you can click on the little edit there. And then just as a sort of final mention, in terms of like case studies or examples of work. So this is an overview of the design award that I went to, or not went to, applied for. So I showed the journey of a specific project, and then on the final page included about the brief and the design process. So based on what I've learned today from Debbie, I'd probably include some more of my examples of my work in my evidence. So that's something I would personally do and improve on for next year. So I shall share this template with you guys. I shall do that now and chat. And then Debbie, you're very welcome to share this with the replay.
Oh,
so I hope that helps. Please do change the colours, make it on brand, use your brand colours, put your logo in, but hopefully it helps you not have this sort of blank space of like, what the hell do I put in? This is how I did it, so but do use Debbie's advice, there's lots of really practical tips that I've learned as well.
Well, Marie, let me just let you do a little shameless plug about what you do, because you've given up your time to come today and you've also put together that wonderful template. So tell us about the Canva Club.
Yeah, so I've got a membership group called Lovely Canva Club, and we have lots of live sessions where I offer support. So later on today is our support session where people come and get design feedback on what they're working on, or if they're stuck on using a particular tool in Canva that they want to start using. I do a training once a month on a particular topic. And I have a guest expert, and more recently introduced a virtual co-working session. So there's loads, as well as lots of past recordings. So I've been running that since I launched that in January 2020, would you believe? So there's like a real wealth of trainings available in the library. And I also help people by working one-to-one with them. So if you're wanting something bit more bespoke and you don't want to do it yourself, or you want a bit of extra hand holding and support, please do get in touch, because I've got some great services around that too.
Brilliant. Put your details in the chat. Thank you. I'm really grateful for you really grateful to you for doing that. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. Right. I can see Denise has joined, so we're going to go to her in a second. She's one of our judges. So I think what Marie-Louise has really demonstrated is how beautiful your evidence can look, and how clarity makes such a difference when it's presented in such a way, so that the judges can really get to the nub of what it is that you do and how you're supporting your clients and the growth of your business. Let me just go on to my next. So I get asked this a lot. How many points is the evidence worth? Well, it is worth a whopping 20 points. 20 points, that's huge. And the judges can also allocate one person in each category that they judge 10 extra points for the wow factor, up to 10 points for the wow factor. And often it's the evidence that actually gives them the wow factor, that they think this person deserves the wow factor. They've laid it all out. I've really got to the nub of this business. I really get what they're doing. So you want to be, well, if you're going to do your award entry, you want to be a finalist, and our finalists become a silver or a gold winner. So you want your entry to be noticed for the right reasons by the judges, and you really want to impress them as much as possible. Now, you cannot make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. You know, I'm not saying that people can create a business that looks amazing just by putting an amazing evidence pack together. If the evidence isn't credible evidence, as I've gone through all of the things that you do need to think about that proves it's credible evidence. So, you know, at the end of the day, you're trying to demonstrate the claims that you've made in your industry, in your entry, and your business acumen. So that's what you're trying to demonstrate to the judges. So, hold on. We have one of our judges here today. Now, she's not just a judge of the Best Business Women Awards, she is a multi-award winner herself, and she's also the author of this book, Winner. And this book also is what I think personally, it's the companion that every business owner needs to have if you're entering awards. You need to be able to use this book as a kind of handbook to help you when you're writing award entries. So Denise has been judging for about the last 5 or 6 years. We met through the awards. She was, I didn't know her before, she entered. She then won Best Marketing and PR in 2018.
Yeah.
And then her entry was incredible. And so I spoke to her afterwards and said, you know, would you like to come onto the judging panel? So Denise, over to you to share your perspective.
Yeah, thank you very much.
What are you looking for?
Well, do you know, one thing I would say, it is wonderful to see a well-presented set of evidence, but we want to see something that has your personality. So please don't think that one size fits all. Some people are image-led, some people are text-led. Some people love social media, some people tolerate it, should we say. I don't think you can be in a position to loathe social media, actually, if you're trying to do awards or presenting your business, because you might be able to loathe certain channels, but all of us need presence somewhere. So it is about putting that forward in what feels like you. What does your company feel like? What is its DNA? And in the wow aspect, for me, particularly as a judge, I want to see where you went and beyond what other people in your sector do. So for me, it's very much about, do you work with your local school and help with interview training, or offer work experience, or even just become at the end of a phone to help someone? Do you do recipe swaps or cake bakes, or help sponsor uniforms? What is it you do? No, nobody who's a small business has got vast sums of money to do a lot of things. And when people are saying, oh, can you donate to our charity of X thousands, for most small businesses that's not practical. But what is practical is doing something. It might be your skill set. You might be a great designer, or you might have a shop, or there might be something that you can give some of yourself to your community. And when I'm looking for a wow, I'm looking for, yes, they've got a credible business. These awards are very highly contested and hard to win, quite frankly, because your competition is good. It is that. So you want to show the best of yourself, but think how you stand out within your own industry and how you can showcase what it is that you do that actually helps the entirety of your community, maybe the environment. Do you offer certain things for your staff? It's all about the rounded picture of your business for me.
And it can be something that somebody puts in their entry that just gives them those wow points. It's that simple.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, yes, well laid out and beautifully designed photos, undoubtedly. Where do I put the most weight? Well, a testimonial is great, but the words of someone who's backing you up, that is far more powerful. So rather than just quotation marks, obviously it's stronger if someone's prepared to put their name with it. And back you for that. So I would always give extra wow for that. But for me, the wow is a feeling. It's the encompassing of all of that presentation together, and you either feel the wow or you don't. It is very emotional.
It does. It is emotional when you judge award entries, because a lot of the time you're reading that story and you're really getting grips with what this business person has achieved.
Yeah, and it's so interlinked with their lives. I think that's the thing. We are judging people on their business, and there isn't more marks for the worst adversity you've overcome. That isn't the classification. Although we're very sensitive to what environments people have and which things they've moved through from. And a lot of the time, a business idea almost starts with a negative, because you're thinking, oh, how did I get in this position, or why are they treating their customers like that? And it prompts you to have that thought for the gap in the market. So it is that connectivity of the emotional plus the tangible. But yeah, it is something, definitely, when I look at it, I want to feel it. And I would say to everybody who's entering, the judging process for me probably takes a whole week of my time. It is an amazing undertaking. It's a privilege to do it, but it is a massive effort. So that being the case, I really want to understand your business, and if I'm slightly confused by something in the process, sometimes the evidence can be the thing that switches the light on. And I do always read them first and then reread them again, and that helps get that clarity. But if you're confused yourself about what your business is, before you put your entry forward, get someone unrelated to you to read it through and say, where is it that evidence is backed up? Because that can add the difference between it being muddied or very clear for the marker.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. So I've just gone through the questions that are in the chat. Client testimonials, I do think, need to be within the last year. Remember I said about showcasing 5 really good reviews. You do not want to be doing ones that are like 5 years old. So I think you really want
I agree. Yeah, it's that key thing. Do you know, sometimes you might have had time off. I would certainly be comfortable to see a strong 3 years
Yeah.
with a good 60% of the evidence being last year. You know, that is kind of how I'd visualize that.
Yeah, definitely. And then someone asked about how long the pages should be. I mean, if you work on A4 pages, I mean, there's no specific length of evidence in terms of I would use A4 pages for one thing, and I think
Yeah.
that's more or less what Marie-Louise has demonstrated in her Canva presentation. And I would say, every business is going to be different. There isn't a one size fits all, but it's about when you come to review your entry before you hit submit, reread the entry, relook at your evidence and say to yourself, have I demonstrated in my evidence what I have said in my entry?
Yeah.
And Denise has just said about sending it to somebody else to look at it first. I get asked a lot to look at people's award entries. I can't give you that kind of level of feedback for the Best Business Women Awards because I'm just inundated. But, I don't mind you ringing us and saying, like I said earlier, should I include that? Should I not? We can tell you, but we can't review all of the entries before they get submitted to panel because we are literally dealing with hundreds of them. But later on in the year, when we don't have the awards going on, I'll often get people who ring me and say, oh, I saw your talk 2 years ago. Could you tell me if I send you my award entry, will you look at it for me? Yeah, I mean, I don't mind just doing a quick scan, but I would say getting Denise's book is really, really helpful because she's laid everything out in there as well. And I've got tons of videos on YouTube, so you need to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I've also got a podcast called The Business Awards Show, and I've interviewed 150 people on there. And there is an episode in the early days of the podcast at the beginning, all about evidence as well. So there's a ton of resources out there that you can utilize for this. And hopefully today has given you a real strong overview of the sorts of things that you can include. And you've got the template as well from Marie-Louise. So thank you for that. So I'm going to stop the recording in case anyone's got any questions, because I don't want that going onto the recording.